Namaste. Welcome to the beginning of another live Sangha. I'm grateful to be here, and I trust that you are feeling as well as you can be at this moment, despite whatever circumstances might be unveiling in your life at this time. If there are any difficulties, as always, remember that this too shall pass, and whatever you are feeling, it is always a valid expression of what you are experiencing both inside and out. I hope to be your humble host, and if I'm not, you can hold me accountable. May you find peace and relaxation here. Welcome to our first guests that are joining now. Hello, dear Freya, and thank you for liking the live. Welcome, dear Villivalo. Freya shares that she's forgotten how to sleep. It's broken. Your sleep bone is broken. How do you get a sleep cast to fix your sleep bone? I'm sorry to hear that, dear Freya. Sometimes our cycles fall into phases of inconsistency, and that's okay. I definitely know what that's like. If you can try to fall into that cycle by giving yourself some hours of time before and after you sleep away from electronics. That includes from this live stream. That can help a big bunch. Also making sure that you're getting little micronutrients like magnesium helps, and that you're not taking caffeine or vitamin B12 or D too late into the day. Also, don't stress it. If you can't sleep, don't force it. You'll get to sleep exactly when you're meant to. But you have work in a few hours, my goodness. Well, at the very least, try to be meditative now and while at work, so you can at least rest mentally, so you can recharge yourself through not exerting your mind too much. Thank you, dearest Dancing Aurora Borealis, for blessing our Sangha, starting off with a heart me today. Aum Ganganapataye Namah. Villivalo, thank you for the heart me too. Aum Kring Kalikaye Namah. And dear Sutek, thank you for the quartet of ice cream cones. And if I can pronounce your name in a preferred way, please let me know. Aum Saraswatiyai Namah. Welcome, dear Exxon. Hello, dear Stevie G. Welcome, Michelle. May you fall asleep soon. Thank you, dear SJ, for the rose you sent as well. Om Dum Durgaya Namah. And dear John Simon Ritchie, thank you for your heart me as well. Aum Shri Mahalakshmiyai Namah. Allow me to tell you a little bit about what's on the agenda for today's Sangha. We'll do an invocation in just a moment, and then we'll have a book reading from the Radiant Sutras. This is a modern translation and commentary of the ancient Vijnana Bhairava Tantra. And that includes some Sanskrit chanting, some poetic interpretation, and a seed for the meditation practice that each yukti contains. The yuktis are 112 gateways to the yoga of wonder and delight, framed as a discourse between the divine masculine Bhairava and the divine feminine Devi. Then we'll have some Q&A. There'll be a question of the day about being groundless. And then we'll end with a mantra chanting meditation. Actually, the same one that we planned last live stream, but we didn't get to because we ran over time. So we just did a short guided meditation instead. It's a mantra dedicated to our ancestors, specifically our ancestral divinities that our lineages maybe were connected to. Thank you, dear Danny, for the follow. And thank you, Dream Traveler, for your heart me. Shri Ganeshaya Namah. Welcome, dear Amelia. The kitties are well. Thank you for asking, dear Freya. So yes, the invocation. You can find it in the Taittiriya and Katha Upanishads, two ancient scriptures, which in Sanskrit sounds like this. Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahavirang Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhi Tamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Shanti Shanti Shanti. And it means something like, may the divine protect us both together. May the divine nourish us both together. May we work conjointly with great ease. May our studies be vigorous and effective, and may we not mutually dispute or hate any. May there be peace in us. May there be peace in our environment, and may there be peace in the forces that act on us. I'm wearing headphones today, which is new. I normally wear earbuds, but I figured that this might give me a little better clue into what the soundscape is currently like, just listening to the background music and feedback on my own microphone. But it's weird listening to my voice in a different, frequency distribution, because all earbuds and headphones sound a little different. So I'm not used to hearing myself like this. It's kind of funny. Thank you, dear Usha Priyaji, for your tiny yippee and your love painting. Harihi Tat Sat. Thank you, SJ, for your rose too. Radhe Radhe. And dear Dan, thank you for your rose. Hare Krishna. Who else is here? Hello, dear Angel Kitty. Dear Astrocaster, you're wondering what my ethnic background is. A whole lot of white in different quantities. Irish, I think, is the main one. A little bit of Scottish, Norwegian, some German, I think. I think I do have a great-grandmother that's First Nation. And I don't know much about my dad's side, other than it's mostly Irish. The only family that I know is, from another country, is all from Ireland, so I have an Irish grandmother that convinced me that she was a leprechaun when I was younger. And to be honest, I'm not unconvinced today either. Thank you, dear Bhakti Morgan, for the heart me that you sent. Kamalir Mahakalikaya Namah. Good to see you too, dear Qualia. I'm feeling well, excited to be here, dear Jack. How are you? Hare Krishna, dear Alan, and thank you for the follow. You're also Irish. That's fun to know, dear Astro. Greetings, dear SJ. From the west coast of Scotland and Ireland. Oh, perfect. Thank you for the share too, dear Iris. Hello, dear Be Free Freeman. And thank you for the follow, dear UT. Anytime the yam is yamming is a good time. You're funny, dear Jack. Thank you, Alan, for your heart me as well. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hello, dear dancing spirit. Namaste, dear Miananda. And thank you, Astro, for the follow as well. That's right, I'm Obi-Wan Kenobi tonight, dear Stevie G. Hello there. We're gonna have a dedicated Q&A section in a few minutes from now. But I'm gonna dedicate all my attention into reading this book for you for the next several minutes or so. Let's continue where we left off in the Radiant Sutras. We are continuing from the 55th Yukti, one of the 112 gateways to the yoga of wonder and delight. I'll chant the Sanskrit and then we'll read the poetic interpretation in English, and then we'll pull out a single Sanskrit word from the verse, kind of as a seed to explain the meditation practice that this sukta contains, or sutra. I get my sutras and my suktas mixed up. This is the 78th verse overall in the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, and it goes like this. Aum murdvasane spijjaikena hastapadau nirashrayam nidhaya tatprasangena parapurna matirbhavet. That means something like, sit in any relaxed, comfortable pose. Experience the earth below as insubstantial, a pillow of air, air that is always vibrating, minute particles in ecstatic motion. Poised here, no support below, no support above, no support for the feet or hands, no support for the mind. Be completely at peace. The word of the verse is nirashraya. Niraashraya. Nirashraya. It means having or offering no prop or stay, supportless, shelterless, alone, lying open. The practice? There is a time to take shelter in props, and there is a time to be out in the open. When you have been doing something in sequence, after many repetitions, you may find you can glide over some steps very lightly and touch down on others. This is one of the implications of nirashraya. You can set aside or skip over the prop of your technique. Part of the delight of watching athletes is seeing the way they flow through their events, almost levitating. This same type of flow also develops in meditation, antar yoga, the inner flow of your technique. After you have gone through the steps of your practice many times, and you know them by heart, go ahead and allow yourself a kind of carelessness, an easy freedom. Fly through the sequence and skip parts if you want. There comes a time to just lean into the practice as if you are skiing. At this point, you leave behind your sense of sequence and lose your addiction to support. The mind moves at the speed of thought, and you can perceive many thoughts in 1 second. Sometimes your mind will delight in doing something in a few seconds that used to take half an hour or all day. The opposite is also true. Sometimes you may want to slow down a process. Human beings invent meditation techniques almost continuously, the very ones described in this Vijnana Bhairava Tantra. These come and go so quickly, in just 5 or 10 seconds, that you may not even notice you've engaged in them. The inner teacher, the wisdom of life, has offered you a bit of instruction, an attitude adjustment, a moment of rejuvenation. When you recognize a sutra and relate to it, you have probably already practiced it spontaneously, nirashraya, without props, many times. One day, you may sense the need to map out a series of steps, feel the nuances, and practice them individually. You may practice this way for minutes or months, until it becomes time to leave the technique behind and return to nirashraya. I like this one a lot. This is a meditation practice about leaving meditation practices behind, being vulnerable, groundless. Alright, let's read 2 more. This is the 56th yukti and the 79th verse overall in the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra. It goes like this. Ham upavishya sane samyagbahu krudvardha kunshitau kaksha vyomni manach kurvan shamanayati tallayat. This one means something like, oceans embrace a continent. Space welcomes the sun. Embrace yourself this generously. Form your arms into a circle and cherish the arising of serenity. Attend the birth of something new. Thoughts dissolve into peace as you become the one who embraces all. The word of the verse is Vyoman. V-Y-O-M-A-N. Vyoman. It means heaven, sky, atmosphere, air, space, ether, especially as an element, wind or air of the body, a temple dedicated to the sun, and this yukti is an appreciation of space. One way to explore space is to stand or sit and form your arms into a circle and become aware of enclosed space. Just notice what is there. Be curious. Let space be itself, infinite, as you embrace it. Embrace the nothing. Imagine you are encircling the whole universe. What quality of awareness do you bring to this embrace? What texture of creativity, love, and welcoming do you want to give? Now, shift the perspective. Be the universe enclosing you with love, welcoming the birth of something new. That's a nice, succinct one. We're going to read just one more verse. This is the 57th yukti and the 80th verse overall. It goes like this. Sthula rupasya bhavasya stabdham drishting nipatya cha acharena niradharam manah kritva shivam vrajet. It means something like, find something so enchanting to behold that you are transfixed, ravished. Allow yourself to be captivated. Gaze upon its form with the eyes of wonder. Attend to details, the shape, texture, these colors. How can something so beautiful possibly exist? You ask yourself. With a steady gaze, melt into the field of space, embracing that form. At once, be at one with the Creator, who is looking through your eyes, loving creation. The word of the verse is nipat. N-I-P-A-T, nipat. It means to fly down, settle down, descend on, alight, to rush upon, attack, assail, to fall down upon or into, to throw oneself at a person's feet, to fall into ruin or decay, be lost, to enter, be inserted, get a place, to direct the eyes toward. The practice. This is a meditation on the experience of being ravished, transfixed, and overwhelmed by something you see in the physical world. You see someone so magnificent that immediately you have the impulse to throw yourself at their feet. You see a baby crawling along, and you are overcome with adoration, falling to your knees beside her and making cooing sounds. Awe occurs spontaneously. Be ready to go with it. See a marvelous work of art, the ravishing gorgeousness of nature. There is a skill in being so open that we can be slain by beauty. We throw ourselves at the feet of that manifestation. The yukti here is aesthetic rapture. We transcend on the ras of amazement. Thank you for listening. We'll pause our reading of the scripture there for now. I'm always so grateful to be able to read and listen with you as we go through it. If that brought out any insights, you're always welcome to share them here. So welcome everyone that joined while we were reading. My attention can return back on the comment section. I totally forgot to do the intention for the space, which I like to set at the beginning of each live stream. So for posterity, allow me to chant it now. May the space be a welcoming environment, open to everyone regardless of background, identity, orientation, belief system, ethnicity, etc. May we come together as fellow students of life to uplift each other, relate in one another's experience, and share positive sentiments. Thank you to those who sent a gift whilst we were reading too. Dear Dancing Aurora Borealis, thank you for your Go Popular, your trio of club cheers, and your 25 club cheers in addition to that too. Bhurmbhuvaswa Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yonah Prachodayat. Thank you, dear Dob Darker, for the heart me and the Go Popular you sent to. Brahm Bhairavaya Namo Namah. And thank you, Zach, for your heart me. Kali Mahakali Kalike Parameshwari Sarvanandakare Devi Narayani Namostute. Thank you, Emma, for your rose. Bhat Hanumate Namah. And SJ, thank you for another rose. Om Namah Shivaya. Alright, let's see what part of the comment section I left off on before I started reading. Haribol, dear Ellen. Thank you for the follow, dear Louisa. And for the share, Ellen. May the force be with you, dear Dan. Am I Hindu? Asks LT. You know, in the sentiment that Hinduism represents something universal that everyone can be a part of, sure. In the same way that the essence of all religion may be inclusive to us all. I may be Christian, I may be Hindu, I may be Muslim, I may be Jew, I may be Buddhist, I may be Taoist. It's all one, expressing itself in many forms. It's a good quote from Obi-Wan, shares Bhakti Morgan. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. And thank you for the follow, dear Ahmed. Welcome, dear secret girl. Thank you for the share, dear Dancing Aurora Borealis. And the follow, dear Batchanel. Hello, dear Dean. Thank you for the follow, dear JJ. For the share, dear Dob Darker. Hello, dear Crystal. Namaste, Emma. Welcome, Twinkle Mystery. Dean, you have had fun competing in the Diamond League in Duolingo. Oh, I forgot about that. I haven't done Duolingo in a while. Learning Dutch. It's always good to learn another language. Thank you, the Henny Network. You've changed your name from Amor Fati, or rather your previous account got bricked. I'm sorry to hear that. Thank you, dear Void, for your tiny beep. Thank you for being a part of this space, dear the Henny Network. Dear Miriam, you had asked if I could explain about Eve, Helen, Sophia, and the Oracle. These are various forms of the feminine that I have a lot to learn more about myself. Especially Helen and Sophia. But Eve is very simple to explain. Eve is the inner child in the form of the divine feminine. Adam and Eve are very simple concepts, but we've complicated them over time unnecessarily. Adam and Eve from the Christian tradition, not just the Christian, but the Abrahamic tradition in general, found in the Genesis book. We say that they're the first humans, but what we mean is that they're the first form that a human takes. That's not historical. It's your childhood. As a child, you were Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Garden of Eden is your childhood. And you loved the Garden of Eden, you loved your childhood because you grew up. Because you ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Well, Eve did. Eve is the feminine inner child. The feminine is the outward expression. The masculine is the inner resolution. So the outward expression ended up getting fooled by the serpent. The serpent is the rising energy. So in the rising energy of growing up, the outer expression got convinced to eat from the fruit. Fruit is result of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. This means that we became attached to the results of our actions based on some kind of dichotomy of good and evil. I said it was very simple, but I'm complicating it, aren't I? Actually, these words overcomplicate something so simple. When we're children, we don't have a complicated worldview, and especially not a worldview that divides things into binaries of us versus them, good versus evil, that sort of thing. So eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil basically means to be convinced by the adults in your life that you have some specific identity that's ultimately separate from some other group of people. So that you know you have the knowledge that you're on the side of good and someone else is on the side of evil. And you grow up with the us versus them mentality. That is how you grow up. You're no longer a child when you start thinking like this. You leave the Garden of Eden. And it's not Eve's fault, because it's part of the outward expression, the divine feminine. This is her cycle. She always goes through a process of becoming too attached to the outward forms, especially forms that seem to identify herself with a particular group as exclusive from another. Eventually, this all gets reunited with Source again, so it doesn't matter. This is the spiritual journey after all. We forget only to remember. So Eve is that naive inner child as the divine feminine within us all. We need her. Without her, we have no body. We have no mind. Body and mind is Eve. Adam is the mind, the higher mind, or the conscious awareness. Now, these other forms of the divine feminine I'll have to learn more about. To be completely honest, I'm more familiar with Eastern forms of the divine rather than Western forms. But the form of the divine feminine as oracle is another wonderful one I know a little bit about. That's her intuitive side, that she's able to follow the flow of things, pick up on patterns. This is accessible within everyone, especially women, or anyone in tune with their feminine side. The divine feminine as an oracle is one of the highest honors to understand, because if you can associate with that within the people around you. You have access to an oracle. If you have a mother, a sister, a grandmother, a godmother, a friend who's very tapped into the divine feminine, you always have an oracle around you. Ask them, according to your intuition, what do you feel for me? I think if we all trusted the intuition of the feminine around us, this world would be a better place. Thank you for the subscription, dear SJ. Never expected nor necessary, but I hope you enjoy the stickers. Om Namah Shakti Shivaya. And thank you, Constance, for the heart may you send. Om Namo Bhagavate Rudraya. That was a bit of a long-winded answer. I'm now 37 messages from the present message. Dear Eli, you're moving out from your parents' house next week. Excited and nervous. I would be too. You get to explore some autonomy, freedom in your independence, which comes with both a lot of adult lessons and space to bring out that inner child that maybe wasn't expected anymore whilst living with your parents, having seen you mature. I very much wish you well in your new space. And thank you, Void, for your tiny nippy. I'm afraid I'm not familiar with that person, dear Don't Hate, Appreciate. But perhaps you could teach me about them. Me and Nanda's got a Sangha snack of grapes and moon. And the moon, I like that. I like that you included the moon as a Sangha snack. Get your Amrita, your Soma, your moonlight. And thank you for sharing the live, the Henny Network. Welcome, dear Amut. All is one. All is now. And thank you for the follow, dear Shark. I'm grateful for your presence in these streams, dear Adam. Dean, you wonder how many different versions of yourself have left breadcrumbs for you to follow, if not all. Yes. We are all multifaceted beings, which means that none of us as a whole are higher or lower than anybody else. But we all are higher, and by higher I just mean more experienced in some aspect of creation, and are less experienced in another, which means that we can all simultaneously be each other's teachers and students. Because whatever you have more experience in than I do, I look up to that. There is always something to look up to in another person. Since none of us are monolithic. Dear Kaisa, you share you can't finish your 12-step group because you can't conceptualize a benevolent higher power. Help? I'd be happy to help you with that, dear Kaisa. See, benevolent higher power is your higher self. If you believe in yourself, then that includes a benevolent higher power. We just have to unlearn what we were forced to believe about the concept of an authoritative higher power that commands the morals of the people. The source of this universe is so simple. It is just pure love. That's it. And from pure love, this whole universe was created. And it is through pure love that all of the spiritual traditions and religions of the world were created too. They each have a claim at a pathway to connect you with that love. And if one pathway seems to be presently represented by people who don't feel that love, then they're not good representatives. So find another way. Whichever way connects you with love, that is the way for you. And it might look different for different people because we're all unique and receptive to a different aspect of that love. But all you have to remember is that your higher self is the benevolent higher power, and its secret name is love. If you can conceptualize love within yourself, you've done it. And thank you, dear Dausp, for your heart meme. Jaya Premananda. Thank you, Fauna, for the heart me you sent to. Namo Bhagavate Dakshinamurtaye Mahyam Medham Prajñam Prayacha Swaha. Calypso, thank you for your heart me too. Ham Hanumate Rudhratmakaya Hum Bhat Swaha. The second part of your comment, dear Kaisa, was that you're trying so hard to convince yourself a higher power exists to surrender to, but you can't. Nothing to convince yourself of. Yeah. No amount of logical reasoning will ever get you to that answer. And the source does not want you to surrender if you don't know what you're surrendering to. Now, if you know that the source is pure love, then it's the easiest thing to surrender to love, because you know that love is the very source of all things. So you're surrendering to the infinite creative power that makes anything and everything happen. The infinite, eternal, ever fresh, ever new bliss that is the seed of existence. So how can you prove yourself of that? How can you convince yourself of that? Is there some proof for that? No. It's a matter of choice. You simply choose to see it that way, and after choosing to see it that way, like a free trial, you get to see the benefits of that perspective. Just try living 24 hours in that perspective. I guarantee that your life will improve if you look at everything as having come from love and ultimately manifesting for the purpose of being some vessel of love. No dogma, no creed, no identification, no conversion necessary. Just love, the universal religion. Welcome, Damien. Similarly, Kamina asks, is there God? I find this question to be funny because it's like asking, does Does pi equal 3.14159265355 blah blah blah? It's a funny question because it's not a question that requires belief. It's a question of just getting to the right answer. If you know how the number pi is created, then you can verify for yourself. But if you don't know what the number pi is by definition, then it is a matter of faith. Does it equal 3.14 blah blah blah, or is it something else? You just need the right definition. So how do you define this 3-letter word that sounds like God? Give me a definition, and then we can work towards the realization of that in our direct experience now. I'm not talking 20 years from now. I'm not talking after some conversion process is done and you do some secret ritual. I'm saying whatever this word means, it should be defined as something that's immediately accessible to you and everyone in this moment, if you know where to look. Therefore, no faith required. We just have to choose the perspective of what definition fulfills this word. Thank you, dear SJ, for your rose. Dear Stevie G, you're learning to listen more to your aunt on some things. I'm sure you've come a long way. Hello, dear Fauna. I don't know who that is, dear Vampire Max. Thank you for the follow, dear Lotus Flower. Much love to you, dear Jay. And thank you, the Henny Network. I am very cared for in this life. I care for all of you. I don't think your question came through, dear Stevie G. It's good to see you too, dear Calypso. Thank you. Welcome, Spaceman. Stevie G, you ask, why would someone want to be groundless and supportless? Well, that's the question of the day, actually. We'll formally open our space to answering that question a little bit. For now, let me try to get to the present moment in the comment section. You're trying to believe in yourself, dear Al. This is the greatest thing you can do. If you can believe in yourself, what more do you have to accomplish other than just witnessing how your destiny unfolds for you? Thank you, dear Courtney, for your heart me tone. Ham jum sa Triambakam yajamahe sugandhim pushti vardhanam urvarukamiva bandhanan mrityor mukshiyamamritat. When will Yam return? Asks George. I don't know. When will Yam return? When will Yam leave? When am I leaving? Thank you for the follow, dear Lena. Dear Sleepy Panda Baby, you ask, what is my intro to Hinduism? You'd love to learn more? Well, to be completely honest, and this is as direct as I can be, Hinduism is something you experience inside. And then the people, the scriptures that are all associated with Hinduism, they tell you what you just experienced on the inside for you. What does that mean? It means that nobody can give you anything new. They can only describe to you what you've already experienced. And that process of self-directed spirituality is called Hinduism. It's the weirdest thing. You might believe that religion is supposed to give you an experience that you don't have already, in the form of scriptures and the stories of saints and sages. Hinduism is the inverse. You experience a spiritual dimension, and then you discover meditation, and then you discover scripture that tells you everything that you experienced in your meditation. So while you're reading, let's say, the Vedas, you don't go, wow, I've never thought of it that way. What happens when people read Hindu scriptures is they go, wow, I just thought of that yesterday. And here an ancient scripture already has it written down. So I can't give you an intro to Hinduism, but you can. Thank you, dear Adam, for your hanging lights. Mitraya Namaha. Thank you for sharing the live, dear Draven. Austin, you ask, why am I so positive? It's kind of annoying. Because I'd be way more annoying if I was negative. Let's be real. It might be annoying to be positive when there's something negative within you that's going unaddressed and you feel isolated in that. Imagine that you're suffering, or maybe you don't have to, and the people around you don't seem to acknowledge the things that are making you suffer. That would be terribly annoying, because everyone else seems to be doing all right, but you aren't. So what's going unaddressed? It is important to address that. But if we lived in a world where everyone around you was negative, that'd be even more annoying. Thank you, dear Samra, for your galaxy. Always a humbling gift. Narayanaya vidmahe vasudevaya dhimahi tanno Vishnu prachodayat. Dear Calypso, thank you for your tiny. Yahoo! Thank you for having a questioning brain, dear Animate. Welcome, dear Macaroni. And thank you for the follow, dear Kali. Dear Henny, you ask, how can you get over an extreme phobia of death? Don't stop fearing death, but develop another fear that's even stronger. You can fear death all you want, but I think you should fear the fear of death even more. because that really takes your life away. A wise person once said, "I don't fear my life coming to an end as much as I fear my life never really having a beginning." So live, because the fear of death isn't living. If you're afraid of dying, you're basically already dead because you're not actually living life to its fullest extent. So the way to combat the fear of death is to switch your aversion from death to the fear. Yeah, death, it can come, it can go. But fearing death, nah. Now that must go. So how do you actually do that? By extreme gratitude for the present moment. No matter what life has dealt you now, is there something in this moment that you can be grateful for? I don't care what it is, how small it is. If you make your gratitude the biggest thing in this moment, how can the fear of death haunt you when you're fully alive right now? It can be as simple as the fact that you still have your breath. What is something that you have in this moment that you're grateful for? Dear Alan, you ask, can you ask my take on the difference between an impersonal God and a personal God? And you give the example of Buddha and Krishna. Well, to be historically accurate, the Buddha did not have any sort of theology whatsoever. Buddhism is famously non-theistic, which is different from both atheistic and theistic. And it's not agnostic either. Atheistic is an active denial of the existence of some higher power. Theistic is an active acceptance of the existence of a higher power. Agnostic means you're undecided. Non-theistic is that you decidedly don't care. Non-theistic doesn't mean you don't know, or that it's unknowable. And it's not that you deny the existence nor accept the existence. In Buddhism, you just don't care. Because there are better questions to ask than, do you believe in God or not? In fact, it might be even more accurate to say that Buddhism is transtheistic, which is another term that religious scholars use to categorize Buddhism. Transtheism means you go beyond theism. You go beyond questioning in terms of gods and goddesses. Transtheism means you're going to the source without any sort of religious connotation. It's very difficult to describe to most Westerners like myself because we're usually trained to live in that duality between theism and atheism, and anything in between is just agnosticism. But non-theism, transtheism, it's about transcending the idea itself, that you don't give much attention to it. So that's to set the record straight about what the Buddha taught. But you asked what's the difference between an impersonal and a personal God. These are just two different perspectives that you can have simultaneously or exclusively. You can choose to see that the source of existence doesn't have any personality. It's just pure being without form. That's known as Nirguna Brahman. Or you can choose to see the source as having some transcendental form, some miraculous form that comes before everything else, an eternal form, an eternal personality, like Krishna or the Christ, or any other form of the divine that you may choose to associate with. That's known as Saguna Brahman. And you can also have both of these perspectives at the same time. You don't have to choose one or the other. You can say that in some dimension the source is nothingness, and in another dimension the source is very specific in its form, and between the two the universe flows. But the impersonal form is very good if you're trying to get out of religious thinking, especially if you had religious traumas and you've undergone dogma. And the personal form is great if you love that sort of thing and are blessed with not having gone through trauma, or you've healed from that trauma and you do want to connect with some particular form again. Neither the Nirguna Brahman or the Saguna Brahman are superior or inferior. Personalists love to say that they're often better than the impersonalists because they've transcended the need for renunciation. And then impersonalists often say that they're better than the personalists because they've transcended the need for attachment. But truly, as long as we feel like one is better than the other, we haven't transcended our own renunciation of one side or attachment to the other. You can exist in the flow between them. But is there any side that you feel particularly called to at this time? Do you feel like you're going towards a kind of dissolution of form, viewing the source as a supreme nothingness? Or do you feel called to view it as some ultimate transcendental manifestation of spiritual form? I'm happy to support you in both ways. And thank you, dear Shannon, for your rose. Ravaye Namaha. Courtney, you had asked what to do when you heard a coworker talk behind your back, saying you remind her of a kid that she always... Des? I think there was a word that didn't get to be completed. She always DES? What to do when you heard a coworker talk behind your back, saying you remind her of a kid that she always... Des. Despacito? Is that what this word is? No, that wouldn't make sense. You'll have to tell me what that word at the end is. But in general, if anyone talks behind your back, this is no basis for who you should think yourself to be. If they are actively choosing to withhold your presence from the conversation, or withhold the conversation from your presence, that's their choice, not something that you have to be on top of. It can be very helpful in understanding who they are. You learn more about them than yourself. If they really wanted to talk to you about something they see in you, they would do it directly. Otherwise, what they are expressing is more of a description of what they're going through inside, which means you've learned something about them, rather than a new axiom to hold as true for yourself. I'm grateful to have you here, dear grateful human. Kira, you could never imagine me being upset or angry. Well, you get the best of me when I go live, because if I am ever upset or angry, I probably won't go live. I'm human too. And thank you for being here, dear asking questions. And thank you for sharing the live, dear grateful human. Ah, here's the full sentence, Courtney. You share how to not take it personally when you hear others talking behind your back in a negative way. I think I already answered it. If they're not being negative, if they're not being... Here, let me put it like this. If they're not expressing something in a way that makes you feel understood, then they don't truly understand you anyway. And that's not necessarily your fault. It's absolutely not your fault that they choose to see those things in you. And it's not necessarily your fault that they can't see the good in you. If you are being authentic to yourself around them, then it's not your fault that they can't see that either. So what do? Well, you can communicate with them. Be absolutely honest. Hey, I heard you talking about me the other day behind my back. And I'd like for you to know that I'm not like that. You can say, I don't know what you've experienced in your past that I seem to remind you of, but I'm not like that. In fact, I was happy to be your coworker until I found out that you spoke such things of me behind my back. I'd like to be better friends with you. How can I help you realize that we're not enemies? That everyone's going through something, and that we're all a little misunderstood. Do you want to maybe grab a drink together, or go for a walk together so we can talk about this sometime? Wouldn't that be a very mature thing to do? Easier said than done, however. In the moment, I'm sure you just want to rip into them, express your emotions. But if you can try to remember that such open communication really sets you on the high road, that is a very honorable thing to do. And even if they don't choose to express it, their subconscious will respect you for it. Hello, dear Aja or Aya. Is it Aja or Aya? You were just listening to my meditation track on YouTube. Oh, perfect timing. Dear David, you had asked, is enlightenment the absence of duality? And how do we keep that moment to moment? It's a very good question. There's one way of defining enlightenment to be like that. Absolutely. However, you are kind of framing the question in terms of a new duality by putting it like that, which would inherently violate the premise of the question itself in terms of your ability to achieve enlightenment by asking the question like that. How so? Because by assuming that enlightenment is the absence of duality, you're already framing your world in a duality. The existence of a non-dual state as something separate or opposed to a dual state. And that's the trickiest part about non-duality, is you have to be careful not to reject duality. Because if you reject duality, then you're enforcing the very kind of duality that keeps you from that non-dual state. This is one of the paradoxes of spirituality. In other words, although the question itself may be literally true, if you then use that as a definition, you will never experience enlightenment as long as you're trying to escape some duality, because that feeling of escape is the duality you're trying to escape. So to put it in positive terms, enlightenment is not the absence of duality. More so, it is the acceptance of duality. True acceptance is true non-duality. And so if you don't want to get trapped in the duality between non-dual and dual thinking, then you accept the duality between the two. That you invite this world of experience to have a subject and object that at one level feels distinct and at another level is one. That way you can be perfectly content in this moment without trying to escape anything. There's a simultaneous duality and non-duality happening. And the reconciling of both without the competition of one perspective as higher than the other is the very acceptance and presence you need to be happy. But you can even get carried away with that too, because there's another duality being framed here that's even subtler. And no matter how careful you are with your words will always frame some duality. Pardon me. And so, to circumnavigate all possible layers of duality that you could get stuck in, the ultimate solace is just unconditional acceptance. Unconditional acceptance for the fact that there's different perspectives. Unconditional acceptance for the fact that you may go in and out of these different perspectives. Unconditional acceptance for the fact that others may have different perspectives. Unconditional acceptance for the differences and how they occur through space and through time. Thank you, dear. Is that a teddy bear emoji? Teddy bear Unicode. Guess who is the cutest? Thank you for your heart, me. Som Suryaya Namaha. Hello, Daniel. Hello, dear Chelsea. Hello, Gary. And what is going unaddressed? Welcome, dear Lisa. Chelsea, you had asked how to process a beloved family member moving away. You process it by complementing that external symbolism with some form of internal symbolism. Externally, they have moved away, but internally, you move them closer to your heart. This means that you balance that physical distance with emotional intimacy. So you do and think in a way that keeps them close at heart, as a way of balancing the fact that they're physically far away. You keep them in your heart. Means you recount the things you love about them. You cherish memories often. Maybe you do a prayer for them in the morning or at night, or both, or any time throughout the day. You can also write down all your fears about what might happen in their absence and then cast them into fire. I'm a big supporter of fire ceremonies. They're very helpful. And of course, the number one thing to do to keep a family member close at heart is to imagine their perspectives whenever you're challenged with something that they have experience in. In other words, you're asking, what would this person say or do? Just like Obi-Wan, use the Force, Luke. Luke kept Obi-Wan close in his heart at that moment. What is it that they like to see in the world that you've learned from them? Thank you for your additions to Der Macaroni. Thank you for the follow, dear Jeremiah. Hello, dear Anna L. Ashton's Creative, you ask, what's my opinion on Pantheism? It's not that I have opinions on any isms. It's that I have a love to see the truth in all perspectives. And I see the truth in Pantheism. How wonderful is it if you can see the living presence of the source in everything around you, in all the particles that make up the atom, in all the atoms that make up the molecules, in all the molecules that make up your DNA, and all the DNA that makes up your cells, and all the cells that make up your body, and all the bodies that make up this world, and all the worlds that make up this galaxy, and all the galaxies that make up this universe. Pantheism isn't just a theory. It's a way of connecting with creation as a part of Creator. Imagine an artist so selfless in their art that they're literally able to turn themselves into art. Now that's the miraculous nature of this universe coming into being. That whatever has caused it lives through it as the whole universe. At least in part. And who knows how much more. Because not everything has come into being in this universe. So much more goes unexpressed that's still possible. All the different variations of the laws of physics, all the different timelines, all that infinite potential that has not come into being. Wow. That's the transcendent source. You found that note about Buddhist non-theism interesting, dear sleepy panda baby, as you thought he was an atheist. Famously, there's a set of what's called Imponderables in Buddhism. And the Imponderables are things that Buddha was said to have the answer to, but he couldn't say, or he discouraged exploring, not because they're forbidden, but because it went outside of the scope of Buddhist practice and teachings. The question of is there or isn't there a God falls under the Imponderables. So Buddha was said to have direct experience of the answer to that question, but chose not to or couldn't elaborate, either because it was impossible to articulate it or because it would lead people astray. In other words, that perhaps there are some questions that can be answered, but aren't necessary to answer for the purpose of achieving the main goal. And I think this makes a lot of sense if you are experienced with the cultural philosophy of many Buddhist practitioners. They're not hell-bent on establishing monasteries and structures of authority. They're not trying to convince you of something to believe in. They're simply trying to serve their communities wherever they are, understand the nature of their mind, and alleviate suffering. And in their perspective, this can only be done when we're not so focused on God. Not to say that you can't be liberated from these hierarchical attachments and serve others under some conceptualization of God. In fact, many people highly benefit from some theistic interpretation. But in general, it often leads many people astray. Even if it's true that there is a God, the over-mentalization of that idea and the misunderstanding of that among novice seekers can lead to a lot of harm. And so the Buddhists simply circumnavigate that by focusing on other things first and leaving individuals discover the truth of that for themselves. And I think that's a highly respectable position. It's like, from a theistic perspective, God is waiting for you to discover God yourself without the need for anyone to tell you how it is. That you can focus on other simpler things and eventually God will be revealed. Or it will be revealed that it didn't ultimately matter. Depending on your perspective. Thank you, dear James, for the heartbeat and the TikTok that you send. Bhanave Namah. And dear Kristen, thank you for your heartbeat. Khagaya Namah. Ralphie, you had asked, do I think space or time travel could be achieved through control of consciousness? That's a beautiful question. It's a question supposed to be answered in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali as one of the Siddhis, one of the perfections that one can achieve through exactly what you described, control of consciousness. Or more accurately, control of one's senses and channeling of one's consciousness. However, the Siddhis actually get a minor representation in the Yoga Sutras and in general from even Siddhas, beings said to possess these perfections, because they also tend to stray us from the path. If we are trying to gain some supernatural power, it can often be an expression of some insecurity. I'll give you a personal example. I used to be bullied in elementary school. And one of the things that I would imagine is floating into the air and gaining control of all the books and rulers and pencils in the room and spinning them around and, showing the people around me that I had mastery over the elements, that I wasn't someone to be reckoned with. And so my fascination with that kind of supernatural demonstration came from being bullied. And the more I found myself in a friend group that really accepted me, the less and less I thought I needed to have any sort of supernatural power that would transcend those around me. Because the true power is in friendship. That said, the Yoga Sutras do really describe these things, that some people have the ability of achieving things like astral projection. But they're like side products of doing really well on the main quest. And the main quest isn't to have control over this reality. It's to have unconditional acceptance for this reality. That ultimately there's nothing to change other than ourselves from the inside out. To become more patient, determined, loving, friendly, giving, compassionate, etc. And if the universe would like to give us some abilities to exemplify those virtues, even more demonstratively, then perhaps indeed one day these superpowers of kindness will come. But focus on the kindness first, and the ways in which they can manifest will come second. And thank you, dear Locked Jaded, for the heart me and the pair of your awesomes. Pushne Namaha. Amelia, your high keeps dying and your throat hurts. You don't want to smoke more. I know what that's like. There's two ways of getting high. Through external means, what are called exocannabinoids, or cannabinoids for short, and endocannabinoids, which are the same class of molecules that you find in cannabis, for example, but actually produced by your own body. This is kind of a revelation in the last century, that the many substances we find naturally occurring in many of Earth's greens and plants actually are a substitute for something that can be created by your own body. So it's not that Mother Earth provides an herb for you to get something that you don't already have. It's that Mother Earth provides an herb to supplement part of you that might not be already functioning highly. That is to say, the people who say they can be high on life really are chemically high. That if you test their system levels, you will find high levels of cannabinoids, just not the ones that come from cannabis, but the ones that are produced by your endocannabinoid system. And children, naturally, in healthy environments, have high levels of endocannabinoids. You put them in a room with an adult who has smoked, the child might even have higher levels than the smoker. And the child can maintain them all throughout the day, whereas the smoker might have to smoke again every few hours to get the same effect. And of course, the smoker's tolerance level gets higher and higher, whereas the child's doesn't, until they have to grow up or experience trauma, and their endocannabinoid system takes a hit. Now, to be completely honest, I don't know much about the endocannabinoid system other than that, and that's enough for me to feel like it's worth sharing. If we can really learn how to be children again, we can be high just like we are when we smoke or take edibles or do something else. But the best part is that it's free. Free, really natural, like literally coming from you, your body, not external to your body, and long lasting too. And you don't have to damage your throat or your lungs. One specific thing that I do know increases your endocannabinoid levels, and you're gonna love this. It's chocolate. Isn't that the best? You know, not some untasty vegetable that's boring to eat. Something you already probably enjoy. Chocolate. Thank you, dear Jen, for your rose and finger heart and heart me. Hiranya Garbhaya Namah. Emila, you'd also asked, what is a source? Source sounds like exactly what It's exactly what it sounds like. Source is that from which something arises from. Like the source of your body came from your mother. So your mother is the source of your body. Art is sourced by an artist. All the nutrients that formed your body is sourced from Mother Earth. All the stuff that makes up this planet is sourced by a planetary nebula. That was sourced from some stellar nebula. That was sourced from some star that blew up. Star that blew up was sourced from some gas. The gas was sourced from a bunch of atoms coming together. Source is the originating cause. And the source, with a definite article, the, is the source of all sources. When you keep climbing that chain of dependent origination, whatever is at the ultimate extremum of that process, that we call the source, or in theistic terms, God. In non-theistic terms, the singularity. And we can deduce many things about it, even if we can't necessarily experience it directly. For example, it must be infinite. By definition, we are describing it as the source of all sources of all sources of all sources of things, etc. So it includes the possibility to produce anything. That's infinite. It is what unites us because we have all come from it, whatever it is. And as far as we know, it's unending, in part due to its infinite potential, but also due to our experiential evidence that energy seems to always continue. So you'll notice that in the past minute or so that I've described the source, I didn't have to use any religious terminology. This means that the source is something that we can explore without needing any particular religion to get us there. But if all things have come from one source, then all religions are also ultimately descending from that source too. So, in one sense, you don't have to use any particular religion. In another sense, you can use any particular religion. That's the universality of the source. Dear Amiri, you ask, have I ever questioned my belief in Christianity? I was very grateful not to be brought up in any particular religion. So I never had to question my faith in Christianity because I wasn't born with faith in Christianity. I wasn't born with faith in any particular religion, other than my mom and I would pray at night, and I just did it because she did it. My mom wasn't religious, but she prayed to just, she prayed to her guardian angels. And when I did grow up, I did question that. I'm like, why am I praying? Who's the guardian angels? I didn't quite get that. And once I became more knowledgeable about religions, I rejected all of them, Christianity included, because my first experience with religion is what I learned in school. And what I learned in school was that we as humans have used religion to try to conquer each other and take control over each other and convince each other that you're wrong and we're right. And I didn't like that. I saw what people were willing to do to defend their faith, even if it meant harming this planet, harming others. And I wasn't about that. And I especially had faith in the scientific approach, which was objective, that through inductive reasoning we could derive theories that matched our observations of this world and try to isolate a more mechanical cause underlying all things called physics. But eventually I questioned my faith in that because it ultimately leads back to the very same thing that you see expressed in all religions. You go one way for so long, you end up back where you started. That's the beauty of spherical geometry, and everything in this universe seems to behave in such a way. I became so logical that I out-logicked logic and ended up in a kind of nowhere land that sounded a lot like the time before time, the space before space, the nothingness that preceded everythingness. And I fell in love with religions, actually, because they seem to exemplify what is discoverable at the end of logic so beautifully. Thank you, dear angel, for your heart meme. Marichai Namah. Dear Kristen, thank you for your subscription also. Adityaya Namah. Grateful Human, you asked if I could speak about the void. Well, I think I just did accidentally, or incidentally. Yeah. The void is one way of understanding the source as the nothingness that comes before everything. This was the biggest leap in logic for me to understand. When I was in university, I became very obsessed with nothingness as a concept. I couldn't stop thinking about nothing. What is that, a triple negative? I couldn't stop thinking about nothing. I was obsessed with how fascinating nothing is. You can play all these wonderful word games with it that seem to elucidate very profound ideas. What comes before everything? Nothing. What comes after everything? Nothing. Therefore, what comes before and after everything is the same. Just by playing that word game, you seem to arrive at that conclusion. And yet it doesn't quite feel like you were playing a game that was meaningless. It seems like you've stumbled upon something that feels legit. Yeah. Why wouldn't that which comes before everything be the same as that which comes after everything? As though this universe was a part of some infinite loop that has cycles to it. And I came to that idea through thinking about nothing. What exists beyond everything? Nothing. What exists within everything? Nothing. Therefore, that which is within everything also exists beyond everything. You know, I'm starting to speed run philosophy just by connecting the ways in which nothing can be accurately used in a sentence. This is the power of the void. This idea of some supreme absence. If you contemplate on that idea, you will find that idea connecting many, many places together. Nothing begins to be your greatest meditation tool. You can use it in many ways. Thank you, dear Wendy, for the rose you sent. Savitri Namah. Dear Betty, thank you for your heart mito. Arkaya Namah. Lots of wonderful comments. Thank you for everyone's patience. I tried to go through each comment one by one, so I'm probably many, many comments behind the top one by now. BT, you share the fact that we exist, meaning existence is real, is crazy to you always. Isn't that lovely? I'm so happy we get to share that together. Tea with Tay, you ask, how can we become less attached? Well, the truth is that even the idea that you should have no attachments is a kind of attachment. So in a funny way, to truly be non-attached means to have some attachments. Because at least in that case, you're not attached to the idea that you should be absolutely one way and not the other. I like to distinguish that in terms of selfish and selfless attachments, or helpful and harmful attachments. And I think you can use your intellect to discriminate which ones are helpful and which ones are harmful. It's all a matter of how you balance that aspect in your life. Having attachment to your family is neither helpful nor harmful unless it becomes extreme one way or the other. Having an extreme attachment to your family, now that would be harmful because, well, it deprives you of your independence to be someone unique from the rest of your family. And in absence of your family, you won't know how to reconcile that absence. But having so much aversion to your family, detachment, now that would be harmful too. Because what a gift it is to have family, and how beautiful it is to be able to learn lessons through experiencing life together with them. Having them as a priority in life is helpful, because you know you always have a set of people that you can learn from or go back to or serve as a way of expressing your love in a way that maybe other people don't know how to be receptive to. And maybe you could redefine the term non-attachment to be that balance, as I see many people do. That it's not about being attached or detached. Non-attached means that you exist in the equilibrium between these two extremes. But in general, I think even this causes confusion. So instead, I like to clarify that we can use the word attachment in a healthy way. I feel, and this is my own personal opinion, that it is more helpful than not to frame the spiritual path not in terms of absolute non-attachment, but as a balance between healthy and harmful attachments. That way we can reconcile the reality that is being human and having attachments. Because I think we all have something that we hold on to in this life that isn't necessarily a bad thing to have, at least at this time in our journey. So the question then becomes, how can we have more healthy attachment? And the answer simply is to use those things that you're attached to in a way that benefits not just yourself as a body and mind, but as everybody and mind. What I mean to say is, try to create an experience with this thing or person that you're attached to that affects everyone in your life positively. For example, don't just be attached to your partner for the sake of you getting pleasure from them. Be attached to your partner in such a way that everyone in your life benefits from your love. That your love becomes something infectious to the people around them too. That way they don't have to be jealous of it. They get to share your love. Because what exists between you and your attachments are sources of joy for you, for your friends, your family, and everyone that comes your way. If you have money and you are attached to money, don't just use money to live in luxury yourself. Use that money for the benefit of everyone, including yourself. That way, we all can have possessions, attachments, associations. We don't have to live like sannyasis, complete renunciants. We can have these very human experiences and use them for the benefit of more and more people. And thank you, dear North, for giving a subscription away to dear Kristen. That's very selfless of you. Bhaskaraya Namah. Dear Tattvamasi, thank you for your quintet of roses as well. Som Sumaya Namah. And dear Giuliano, thank you for the Go Popular. Kameshwarya Namah. Courtney, you had asked, if someone is talking behind your back negatively, does that mean they see it in themselves? It can be helpful to look at it that way, indeed. Because then you know that what they're speaking negatively about is not you, but whatever it is within them that you've triggered. Usually unintentionally. Most of us don't intend on triggering other people by just being ourselves. I think some part of all of us can agree that it would be nice if we could all just be ourselves without upsetting anyone else. That means if you do happen to upset someone else, that upset is likely not caused by anything within you, but something within them that they choose to connect with you. And to be fair, we do this all the time ourselves in different ways, so we can't blame them. It's just so easy to logic your way like this. Oh, every time person A does this or that, I'm upset. Therefore, it's their actions that are causing my suffering. And it's not easy to realize that actually there's another step in that chain of suffering. It's because we have experienced something else in the past where we have either gotten hurt or weren't allowed to do something ourselves. When we see person A do this or that, it subconsciously reminds us of the time that we got hurt or weren't allowed to do something. Therefore, we suffer. And being able to have that level of self-awareness is truly what we should all be aiming for. Because then, this world is not about trying to situate the people around you in such a way that you remain untriggered, but you situate yourself in such a way that you heal from your traumas, that you forgive all the people that were a part of that, and you seek to understand what it is that can be brought out today, which has been closed off for whoever knows how long. And then, whenever you are in a situation where you feel uncomfortable, you know that that's something within you that you can change. And that gives power back to yourself. That creates the possibility in you to be who you want to be, no matter what the environment seems to indicate for you. And that is something that I am continuously learning, and I'd love to include you in that learning journey with me. I'm there for you, and if I can help anyone with that too, please let me know. And thank you for the follow, dear Levi. Sleepy Panda Baby, you ask, if everything is an emanation of Source, does that mean that we're alone technically? Alone together? Your greatest fear is being alone. It surpassed your fear of death. If we're being absolutely technical down to the slightest detail, no. This understanding does not implicate that you are alone, although it seems to, because if everything comes from one source, and so all of us are emanations from that source, doesn't that make the source alone? There are two ways in which this is not true. The first is that alone implies the existence of something you're separate from. When we say everything comes from one source, that also implies that there's nothing to be separate from. Therefore, nothing is ever truly alone. One source is everything, all infinite possibilities. There couldn't be anything else to be separate from. If there was, then by definition it comes from the same source, and therefore we reach a contradiction. Secondly, none of us are the source in its entirety. We all are an amalgamation of unique aspects of that source. And at that level, we have each other. At that level, we truly are distinct from one another. That I don't get to know your thoughts, you don't get to know my thoughts. There is a kind of intimacy of just this form, a privacy to it. There is an autonomy here that can't be violated in the autonomy over there, and you aren't just hallucinating the other forms in this world. They truly do exist, coinciding with your existence too. We share the mystery in the same way. So technically, no, the source is not alone. And definitely no, we are not alone in terms of our collective manifestation. Don't worry. Courtney, you share, when you confronted the person that spoke behind your back, she said, "I don't want you to think I don't respect you," when you confronted her about it. Well, you can remind her that one of the ways of showing respect to someone is not speaking behind their back. But clearly, she values your perspective of her very much. And that's your in this relationship. There is something about you that she cares about. Clearly there's an insecurity there too about how she's perceived by others. If you can befriend that vulnerable part of her, you won't have to worry about her speaking behind your back. Thank you, dear Innasoda, for your rose and heart meme. Bhagamadanyay Namah. And thank you, dear Bhante Varapanyo, for the love you so much. It's been a while, my friend. Om Mani Padme Hum. I'm very far behind in the comment section, so it might take me a while to catch up to the present if you commented anything. Dear Kari Reg, you ask, how do you get in alignment with abundance? You're confessed. You're confessed? Well, I'm glad you got it out of your system. I assume this is an autocorrective. You're confused. How do you get in alignment with abundance? Abundance propagates the more you feel like you already have abundance. Gratitude is the best attitude for abundance. Think about the universe as though it were a resource distribution system. And the universe likes to give more resources to those who have the greatest potential at distributing those resources. If you signal to the universe that you have a capacity to share, the universe will test you on that by giving you something worth sharing. Many people are failing that test horribly. That throughout their life they showed how able they are to share, and so they were given a lot. But as soon as they got a lot, they go, oh, now it's mine. I'm not giving it to anyone else. As long as you don't become like that, the universe will continue giving. If you believe that the universe is a resource distribution system. And this doesn't even have to be a matter of faith. You can look at it logically too. Like the laws of physics. Entropy is always increasing. Energy tends to distribute or flow in such a way that where there is high levels of energy, there is a gradient, a force that compels the energy to distribute into the low energy places as well. Information is always conserved. The universe loves to connect more and more particles through interactions. If you can get a hint of the apparent purpose behind these physical facts, then why shouldn't that exist on large scales as well? Clearly, our human civilization would very much benefit from this if we all followed that too. So why don't you open yourself up to being more of a giver, and the universe will show you all that you have to give. And there's a lot already there, but so much more you have yet to experience. Thank you, dear Code Man, for your heart me and tiny. So one practice you can do for abundance. Actually, I'll give you two practices you can do for abundance. The first is, every night, recount 3 things you're grateful for. That's the first practice. The second, try to do one selfless thing per day. That means giving in some way. If you don't have anything to give physically, at least give your time. And it doesn't have to be long. Even 1 minute talking to a stranger is a gift of your time. Thank you, dear Stacy is here, for your heart me. Bheurundaya Namah. Hello, look at this new little guy. Hello, Jesus. Or Jesus. Thank you for the follow, Ternisha. The letter C. Oh, it's Cass. Your name is Cass. Can I do ASMR? Well, you know, I had an ASMR YouTube channel. I still do, technically. I just haven't really done as much as I could do with that yet. Thank you, I love yourself, for the feather mask. Vahnivasinyai Namah. Dear Stevie G, do you remember me saying that I am practicing Tantra? You do? How am I doing so? I don't know exactly what I said that you're referring to, but we're all practicing Tantra. As long as we understand that Tantra doesn't have to mean anything specific. It comes from the root tan, which means to weave, and the tool suffix tra, which means like instrument of. So Tantra means the tool or instrument or technology of weaving. Historically, it was used as a name for the loom in Sanskrit, because the loom literally is a technology of weaving. But metaphorically, Tantra means weaving together many tools of meditation, spiritual practice, especially those that come from diverse sources. So if you resonate with the idea that you find truth in everything, and you practice a little bit of this, a little bit of that you're willing to try anything, then you are practicing Tantra by the very definition. Tantra is not any particular lineage, although there are many Tantrika lineages. You don't have to be initiated into them to still be following the general philosophy that's so universal. Thank you for the follow, dear Locked Jaded. And thank you for sharing the live, dear James. Courtney, you had also asked how to be happy at work after starting a new lead role, worrying if you're good enough or if you can handle it. What you're describing is, to me, a bit of imposter syndrome. You're worried if you're actually going to fit a lead role. You know, that's actually one of the best qualities to have to be a leader. It doesn't actually contradict your confidence. Your confidence and your humility, which is what that is, go hand in hand. It is a sign of a good leader to be humble. And for the case of a leader, humility means that they don't know if they're going to be a good leader, but they'll try their best anyway, right? And so for the case of yourself, if you know that you'll try your best even if you don't know if you can do it, that is one of the very reasons why you'll probably excel at what you do. And I hope you can affirm yourself of that. Thank you, lobotomy enthusiast, for the "You're Awesome" ice cream cone and the heart meme. Vajreshwariyai Namah. Thank you for the follow, dear Giovanna. Is it Giovanna or Giovanna? Nathan, you ask, do I believe in God as an all-knowing deity or awareness, or both? You know, in English, we tend to reserve words that have one or two meanings. And if they have different meanings, we call them homophones, which means that they're actually two different words that happen to sound the same. A common example and a genuine homophone is the number 2, and then there's the word to, as for example, as in I'm going to the store. These are genuinely different words. In fact, they're spelled differently as well. But other examples of homophones actually arise from an original meaning that branched off in two different directions. A great example is the word point. If you open a dictionary, the word point has many definitions. In fact, it's one of the words with the highest number of definitions. You know, there's the verbal sense of to point, and then there's the idea of the very tip of something being a point, and then there's the idea of the most central or crucial fact of someone's argument being the point. But you can get a sense that these aren't just homophones, words that happen to sound the same but mean completely different things, but they all originated from some common meaning. Some common meaning about elucidating something specific. It's in the same way that I say the word God can refer to an all-knowing deity or awareness, not as distinct meanings, but as both arising from a common original meaning. God is a homophone of many meanings. And whenever we talk about God, we're almost never using the same meaning. But the essence that gives rise to all these meanings is the same. Both an all-knowing deity and awareness give the impression of some universal consciousness, either extrapolated in the ultimate sense as an all-knowing deity, personified, symbolized in form, or personalized as the awareness that shines through every form. You can take it both ways, and you can take it many more ways than that. And in fact, the very same reason that the word God can be used for so many different things is also proof of the infinite potential of the essence of that source. Thank you, dear Celine, for your rose. Shivadutyai Namaha. I love yourself. Thank you for the paper crane and for the corgi. Dwaritayai Namaha. Vina, you ask, am I going to make more videos? Probably. Do I like integral theory or integral theory? We found ourselves ask. You mean, are you talking about mathematical integrals? The theory of integration? Yeah, I'm a fan of integral theory. Or is this another theory called integral theory? Jen, you really loved my video about the Garden of Eden. Where can you watch it again? I don't plan on releasing that video again, but we can absolutely talk about that here in this space if you want. I'm glad you appreciated that form of storytelling, however. And thank you for the follow, dear Rokyo. I'll have to learn how to pronounce your name. And Greener. Mike, you had asked, how can you increase your testosterone? Well, there are many ways. I probably first have to ask why. Sometimes we can look for a solution to a problem that can be solved in a different way. But if you really need to increase your testosterone, I'd recommend talking to a doctor about that. And they might recommend something like various supplements that do have a scientific basis, like ashwagandha. There's limited evidence that suggests ashwagandha as a supplement can increase testosterone levels. Also, in general, working out And this is true regardless of what body you have. However, high levels of testosterone neurologically is linked to irritation, aggression, and these are not things that you necessarily want. It might bring out some masculine features, but it can also lead to male pattern hair loss. So if you like having long hair and a full head of hair, you might want to balance your hormone levels rather than try to increase them. All about being in touch with both your masculine and your feminine. Thank you for the follow, dear. Ascend with Tashina. I am wearing Rudraksha seeds, dear Mirna. Also, I made rings out of very small Rudraksha seeds, which I think you're pointing out. Dear D-Monk, you ask, do I believe in a firmament? You're inquiring about something mentioned in Genesis, in one of the early verses of Genesis. I do have a Bible next to me. This is the Jerusalem Bible. If I crack open Genesis, fun fact, this copy of the Bible is edited by Tolkien. One of the things he did besides writing the Lord of the Rings universe is he edited Bibles, such as this one. This is how Genesis goes. According to the, I assume this is the King James translation, or based on it. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was a formless void. There was darkness over the deep, and God's Spirit hovered over the water. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw the light was good, and God divided light from darkness. God called light day, and darkness good. And darkness he called night. Evening came, and morning came, the first day. God said, "Let there be a vault in the waters to divide the waters in two." And so it was. God made the vault, and it divided the waters above the vault from the waters under the vault. God called the vault heaven. Evening came, and morning came, the second day. So here in this version, we don't get the word firmament. We get it being translated to vault, because English is not the language in which the Bible was written. The very first versions in the First Testament were written in probably Aramaic. The oldest versions we have are written in Aramaic and Hebrew mostly. Translating ancient Hebrew is extremely difficult, not only because the amount of time that has passed since this language was spoken. Even though modern Hebrew does exist, it's very different from biblical Hebrew. And also, there are concepts in Hebrew that are so difficult to translate into any other language because it's so spiritual. So this word that I don't know in Hebrew is being translated in one case to firmament and in another to vault. But in general, it gives the sense of some container that separates the oceans above from the oceans below. But what we really must understand first is what this verse is describing. Most people only understand this to be a literal account of Genesis, of creation. What not many people realize is that's not the only way to interpret these verses. In many mystical traditions, everything written scripturally can be seen as a metaphor for something that happens inside you when you go through the process of spiritual awakening. Everything down to even the word God is a metaphor. Let's go through those first 8 verses again with the metaphor that the mystics choose. So in the beginning, not of the universe, but in your beginning, you coming to awaken. In the beginning, God is the innermost source. That's your consciousness. Created. As consciousness, you don't create, you reveal. The heavens is everything that exists inside the formless world, and the earth. The earth is everything that exists outside, meaning your body. Now the earth, the body, was a formless void. One recognizes the ultimate emptiness of the body. There was darkness over the deep. Darkness is ignorance. The deep is everything that's inside. There is a recognition of just how much you don't know about yourself deep inside. And God's spirit, what is the spirit of consciousness? That's your sense of self. Who you take yourself to be, hovered over the water. The water is all the possibilities you have yet to emerge. Hovering in the sense of, you're anticipating this awakening. You can get the feeling of this coming through. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Consciousness doesn't say anything. Consciousness just realizes, manifests. Let there be a light. Let there be understanding. It's a prayer, a wish within yourself to understand, to illuminate this darkness, this ignorance. And there was light. That's the power of that prayer. Just by wishing to understand, you understand. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Nothing happened in between. No process of that light coming. It happened from the saying. Metaphorically, therefore, it is from the will for consciousness to understand itself that understanding happens immediately. We'll have to pause for a second. My phone alarm was on. I had to turn it off. God saw that the light was good. Your very own consciousness recognized that the light, the understanding, was significant. That the purpose of discovering who you are is important. God called the light day. Oh, sorry, I missed the line. And God divided that light from darkness. God distinguished understanding from ignorance. And day, this is one of those times where the scripture itself is giving you an insight into the mystical vocabulary of the sages. Day itself is a living symbol of understanding. This is not just useful for other parts of the scripture when you want to understand what the symbolism of day is, but also in your own life, that what happens under the sun is naturally symbolic for the process of understanding yourself. Our world and the things that happen in this world are naturally symbolic. And darkness he called night, and ignorance goes by the secret name of night. And you already know this, dark night of the soul. Ignorance. Evening came and morning came, the first day. The first day, what did we just learn is day? Day is coming to understand yourself. So this is what first happens when you come to understand yourself. God said, let there be a vault. This is the word that gets translated to firmament. In the waters. To divide the waters into. The waters are everything that has come to emerge, everything that has come to be manifest. So we're creating a kind of discernment between two forms of manifestation that could come into being. And so it was. Just by assuming there is such a distinction, that distinction exists. God made the vault, and it divided the waters above the vault from the waters under the vault. The waters above makes up the higher self, and the waters below makes up the lower self. God called the vault heaven. Heaven is what separates your higher self from your lower self. Your lower self lives in the world of suffering. Your higher self lives in the world of everlasting peace. Evening came and morning came, the second day. And this is a very quick summary of the mystical translation of the Bible. When you can substitute the words that refer to something apparently literal for something deeply symbolic. And you can do this with any spiritual scripture. We could spend hours and hours and hours and hours on just the first word, let alone the first few verses that we went through there. And that's just my choice of symbolism. You may find something different, but that's the power of the mystic tradition. As you take a source like this, and you come to utilize it for higher realizations. Anyway, no matter how different your interpretation may be, if you're following the same thread that the original poets did when putting it into words for the first time, their realizations, what you come to is going to be as universal as you are intimate with the text. That is to say, even if we end up choosing different words for the symbolic map between the physical and the spiritual, we're going to touch on something very similar. And this word that gets translated to vault or firmament, under the symbolic interpretation, actually the text itself even gives you the answer to what it is. It is heaven. But you can go back again and ask, well, what does heaven represent? In this case, heaven represents the mind, because it is the mind that separates your lower self, the world, this is the waters below, from the waters above, your higher self, your consciousness. And within heaven, within your mind, you can be led to an everlasting source of bliss and peace. If you follow it, if you use the mind to take you inward. But if instead you use the mind to take you outward, you will find only hell for yourself. So, we got onto this topic, if you remember, from asking the question, do I believe in a firmament? Well, when we really break down how this word is to be used in the Bible, this word is not really meant to be interpreted literally. So at that point, it's not a question of belief. When we understand the symbolism behind the word, it's, do you believe in your own mind? Well, you absolutely have a mind. Whether it's working in a helpful way or a harmful way is not something I can answer for you. Thank you, I love yourself, for the quintet of the half a dozen finger hearts. Here's one for you too. Nityaya Namah. Dear Michael the Archangel, thank you for a rose as well. Kula Sundarya Namah. Dear Jos, thank you for your heart, mate. Nilapata Kinyai Namah. Dear Icarus, thank you for your TikTok. Vijaya Namah. And L, thank you for your pair of tiny tinies. Thank you everyone for exploring that with me. Do forgive me for the number of comments I get. I often end up further and further away from the present moment. So I think I'm going to have to do a little bit of a reset and just start from the current present moment in the comment section and go from there. Otherwise, I can just keep on reading each comment one by one, and it takes many hours to get back to the present moment, which I don't mind, but for the sake of my sleep schedule, I think I should, every now and then find my way back to the present moment in the comment section. Yes, dear G, it is a great time for the question of the day. Today my question is, there are times to be grounded, but when is it time to be groundless? I'd love to explore that question with you. If if you're interested in exploring it together. On a flight, shares I love yourself. It'd be very difficult going fast and far if your plane was grounded. In space, shares Misty Murray. I love that. Rebecca Moonstone, you give a paradoxical answer. While grounded. John Jones, you share during creative endeavors. I like that. Be free. Dean, you share during sleep, perhaps, while we are dreaming. That's very beautiful. I see the truth in that. When we dream, adds user 308, dreams remind us how to fly. That is true, isn't it? Good night, dear Rhiannon. These are good answers so far. Sunniest sunshine, you share while you're awake, enjoying the ever-present moment. I like that. Funny how these words can be used in more ways than one. Being grounded gives you the sense of solidity, solidarity, support. But we can also use groundless to point out some other feelings or qualities that are beneficial in other ways, like freedom, like exploration. Intimate moments, shares Kali. I see the truth in that as well. Dear River, you share when you love and cry. That's beautiful as well. When standing up for what's right, shares a day late and $1 short. Can you give me an example of that? And thank you, Ganesh, for sharing the live. When you're creating something, shares BT. What is that link between creativity and being groundless? I guess it's about thinking outside the box. And if your box is on the ground, going outside of it, being groundless. It's a good reminder, dear sunniest sunshine. But what is right to some might be wrong to others. All in the perspective. There is no box, shares G. I love that. You are free. What box? Exactly. On a boat, shares Jacob. That's a good one. If your boat were touching the ground, you better hope there's no water and you've got nowhere to go. Or you've intentionally let your anchor out. Dear Swerk, you're wanting to join the live stream. You're already a part of it. I'm not accepting guests at the moment. But if you have something valuable to say, you're always welcome to put it in chat. Being groundless is good in ascension, shares Wind Mind. I like that too. Yeah. Hello, dear Omar. God bless you too, dear Swerk. A day late and $1 short. You share earlier you were thinking like a protest or something, but you think you misunderstood the question. You might not have. I was just curious where that idea came from. Being groundless when you're standing up for something in the sense of a protest. Because to me, when I think of a protest, I think about standing your ground. Maybe when you think of groundlessness in the sense of a protest, you are using it in the sense of not having ground to stand on in the form of an attachment. That it's not about conquering or controlling any ground. It's about realizing that we all share this ground before our feet and about rising above it. Maybe in that sense. But I like what you also shared about when enjoying nature. Rebecca, you shared to be groundless while protesting could mean to stand without fear and in your truth. I think I see the way in which that makes sense. Yeah. Stevie G, you don't know how to answer this as you think being grounded is always great. You see it as stability. Yes, ground can absolutely represent stability. When asking this question, we're changing what it represents. We are bending our relationship with our words to see how these words can be used in different ways. So yes, you're absolutely right. Ground can represent stability. But what can being groundless represent? That's not in contradiction of stability, but in complement to stability. Sunny Sunshine, you add that all of us have different experiences and differing values, but we all live in this world. So we've got to hold enough space for us to coexist. We're all so unique, yet we share something in common. Many things in common, thankfully. One of those things is undeniably the ground beneath our feet. Rebecca, you share. Sometimes stability gets old. Let's topple it for fun. To which Stevie G pointed out, "Ooh, you're a wild one." What a lively discussion today. Lakonen, you share. In Finland, you have a saying, "The freezing weather will bring home the pig." Bring back home the pig. Yes. I see the literal meaning of that. Now can you illuminate me as to the metaphorical meaning? Is it that the freezing weather is a representation of suffering, and the pig is our wandering nature? And when we experience suffering, we are brought back to our true self because it realizes that we've strayed away from home, which exists within us. And in the separation from that, we suffer. And in this case, sometimes being groundless, sometimes when we experience a lack of stability, that reminds us to be stable once more. Hello, dear Deanna. Are you calling me Siddhartha Gautama? DVG, you share, you can be groundless when we're on roller coasters. Well said. And you can apply that to the roller coaster of life. In tough times, you go home. Well said, Misty. And thank you for the follow, dear Karma. I'm glad I have a following of Karma. What would I do without Karma? I'm not sure how to take this. Deanna says, enlightenment is crazy because sometimes you could reach it and act nothing like this, but you could also turn out exactly like this. I don't know if you're referring to me, but if you are, I don't know how much of a representative I am on this mysterious idea we have called enlightenment. All I know is that deep within all of us, there is a source that isn't anything you can think of, but yet all thoughts ultimately come from it. That is perfectly shining and illuminating, that you are, have been, and will always be, and that core is forever enlightened. And that I, sitting before you in front of my camera, have a long way to go in order to understand that true self that exists within us all. And I can't promise that I won't lead you astray if you join me in whatever journey we have to share together. But I can say that I'm willing to work on my mistakes when they arise, that I'm happy to have many friends journey with me, and I love learning from all of you too. Thank you for being here. I'm excited for the future of this journey we call life. Thank you, dear Tan Hao Yu, for your heart meme. Sarvamangalaya Namah. Hello, Johnny Doe. I'm doing well, thank you. How are you? Hello, dear Shakira. DVG, you share groundless when needing to fight for survival, maybe? Yeah, I think I see the way in which you mean that. Thank you, Johnny Doe, for your rose and flowers too. A day late and $1 short, you share your first thought was sleeping, which someone already mentioned. That's a great one. We are all unique, but we don't have to be in every way. If someone has the same answer, you don't have to come up with a new one, as that affirms them. As well as empathizes with yourself. When exploring creative endeavors, add Sleepy Panda Baby. And Misty Murray, you ask, how many questions do you get? Well, I have one main one throughout the live stream, but I'm always happy to ask mini questions as well. Like, how are you? And thank you, Seraphim, for the heart me you sent. Shailaputriyai Namaha. All rivers lead back to the ocean. Well said, dear Deanna. Can I say Siddhartha Gautama? It's a good name. I think I recognize the word Siddha, which is the past participle of the root Siddh, meaning to perfect. So Siddha means that which is to be perfected. Artha means wealth. So Siddhartha means one who has the wealth of perfection. A beautiful name. Gautama, I forget what this word means. Someone will have to remind me what Gao means. I think it refers to the senses. Tama is a superlative. So Gautama might mean something, if I'm remembering what Gao means correctly. Someone who has really heightened senses, you know, they're the most sensible, the highly sensible one, Gautama. I could be wrong about the etymology of that, however. It's the princely name of the person who became known as the most recent Buddha. Buddha, by the way, coming from the root Buddha, meaning to awaken. Buddha is the past participle of Buddha. So the awakened one, the one who has been awakened. It's related to Buddhi, which is an adjectival form of awakening, like the one that awakens, that which is responsible for awakening, that which is related in some way to awakening. It's a name for your intellect, Buddhi. So the Buddha achieves Bodhi through their Buddhi. The awakened one awakens through their intellect. Sanskrit lesson of the day. Thank you, dear Shakira, for your heart me and tiny tiny. Yippee. And thank you, Johnny Doe, for your finger heart. Intuiting a mantra for you. 1 second. Brahmacharnyay Namaha. Groundlessness is when you just want to let loose and party hard. That's a good one, Stevie G. I love how hard you're thinking for this one. What is Siddhe? Asks Rebecca. S-I-D-H-E, Siddhe. If it's spelled like that, it could be the first person singular middle voice, I awaken. The middle voice giving an extra connotation of from within. Siddhe. But I'd have to double check that. Thank you for the follow, dear girly tots. And thank you for the follow, the letter S. Stevie G, you have another competitor, aka the only S. Am I religious? Asks Josh. No, I'm not religious. Well, to the religious, I'm not religious. To the not religious, I'm religious. So what does that make me? Something in the middle of both, I guess. And you share. It's time to be groundless when you're manic. Good answer. You're funny. Sergio, you share. The time to be groundless is when the matter within you is so dense it weighs the spirit. I love the way you put that. Well said. When you're groundbreaking, share smiles. Hey, I'm gonna pause it there. I think you put it perfectly, dear Smiles. Time to be groundless when you're groundbreaking. Thank you for that. Thank you, Tatwamasi, for your trio of roses. Chandraghantaya Namah. Deanna, you ask, am I in a constant state to euphoria? You know, I might present that because when I do these live streams, I am usually feeling very euphoric. But from a very human side of me, when I'm not live streaming, I often forget even the things that I say. And that's the reality of the spiritual path, is that even if we have many perspectives that we can draw from at any time, the hard part is always putting them into practice, especially when things go wrong. And I'm absolutely still learning how to do that. But in general, over the past several years of my life, I have been getting more and more euphoric on the day-to-day. So on average, I'm going up. But like anyone, I have hard days too. I have moments where it doesn't feel like I'm connected to an inner source of happiness and bliss. But I welcome those days too, because they're some of my most informative days. I learn a lot more about myself on those days than probably any other day. I'm grateful for them. I have the knowledge and I can give it, share sunny as sunshine, but not always take it myself. Like that character in Avengers Endgame who helps Thanos get the Soul Stone. I guide others to a treasure I myself cannot possess. Something like that. I would put it like this, that I am very much a student myself, just enjoying being taught like everybody else too. I love making mistakes and finding things out the hard way. My higher self does, at least. My lower self knows what it's like to be depressed or anxious at times. But overall, I enjoy the human experience. It's fun. Hello, Mariori. Deanna, you had asked, how do you ground yourself in normality without drowning in it? What a beautifully phrased question. There's enough space to be authentic and appreciate others' authenticity too. And it's in that space that you can ground yourself in normality without drowning in it. What that means is that when it comes to everyone in your life that you experience on a day-to-day basis, inside your home and outside, at school, at work, whatever, normality means being a part of that social construct. And that doesn't have to mean falling into some expected place yourself. All it has to mean is that you respect and appreciate the role that everyone else plays. That means when you're surrounded by other people in normal situations, that you vibe with their authentic selves. You understand that some of their authenticity comes out in the role that they're playing, and some of it is hidden. And you can empathize with those hidden parts. You know it's there. But on the outside, you know, while you're working as a clerk at McDonald's, you're not going to express every part of yourself. Otherwise, nobody would order any food from you. Because human beings are multifaceted. At one level, you may be able to take someone's order. At another level, you may be a freaky, weird, wild child that wants to dress up as a butterfly and scream in the forest. But if you did that while you worked at the till, you'd have a hard time getting anyone who struggles accepting that to order medium fries and a McFlurry from you without being terrified. What am I getting at with that example? That you know that when you're out in public, that there are parts of people that go unseen. And that's okay. Because part of the beauty of being human is that you do have spaces where you do get to express that. And that makes it even more fun in those situations. You can be sensitive to all the weirdness just through that knowingness that everyone around me is such a different, unique, weird person in their own way. And you can love that. At the same time, we all have roles to play. But wouldn't it be wonderful if at the same time to all of that, we started cultivating a world where more and more parts of ourselves could be expressed freely. That means being a bit of a groundbreaker yourself in your own vulnerability, having trust that you're not going to get judged in the way that you think you are for just being weird sometimes. Allow yourself to be awkward, quirky, fun. And if you do get judged, whatever. At least you've planted the seed in other people's minds for them to one day come out of their shells too. Thank you, dear Trianadora Sarah, for your heart meet and the Go Popular. heart me. Aum Skandamatore Namaha. Thank you for asking, dear Illuminate. I am well, thank you. How are you? I've seen many hummingbirds this year, dear Misty. I'm very grateful to live in a place where there are many. And my mother loves planting many flowers, and she has a little hummingbird feeder in our backyard. And the hummingbirds are so good at getting our attention when their feeder is low. They'll fly up right up to you and go... And for a second you go, why is there a hummingbird trying to talk to me? And then you go, oh, that's right. They recognize that I'm a part of their environment and are asking me to help them with something. And then they fly over to their feeder and they go... And you go, oh, they're trying to direct my attention over there. What is it over there that I can change for them? The hummingbird feeder level, it's low. Oh, well, I can make that higher. So you go and make more hummingbird food. And then you come outside, and you go up to them, and you go... And then you go over to the hummingbird feeder, and you go... And then they look at you, and they go, why is this guy chirping at me? Oh, wait a second. He's a part of my environment and wants to communicate something with me. What is it over there that I need to look at? Oh, it's the hummingbird feeder higher. Yay! And then you've successfully completed another quest of being a part of nature. River, you share, you heard Ramdas say, when I know who I am you. It resonates. I love that. I also love the second part of that Ramdas quote. Something like, and when I forget who I am, I serve you. And thank you, dear Trenadora Sarah. I do try to increase my Sanskrit pronunciation skills a little bit every day. Deanna, you ask, so are you seeing me fully unmasked right now? Or am I humbling myself for the sake of the live stream? Well, it's a very humbling question. I do feel like myself when I go live. There are many parts of me that I don't show while I'm live. And if there are any parts that I don't show because I feel embarrassed, I will certainly try to work on that for all of you, because I love showing my authentic self. But there are also parts of me that just don't come up because it doesn't fit the context. Anyone who knows me in real life, like the lovely G2 Infinity, I'm sure she can tell you about all the wacky and crazy things I've done when we were on adventures the past few weeks together. I'm always making random noises and humming the tunes of songs that don't exist, or saying, "Did you know?" followed by a fact that doesn't actually make any sense. I'll say, did you know that before mountains existed, people had nothing to climb? Dear JJ, you're wondering, what is a foreign word I've recently learned? Well, I'm always learning new Sanskrit words. The most recent one was the word of the most recent verse that we read in the Radiant Sutras. That was nipat, which means to fly down, settle down, descend on, alight. It's a good word. Nipat. Macaroni, you share, before people existed, mountains had no one to appreciate them and climb them. And Julia, you share, well, mountains existed before humans, you would answer. Ah, you fell for my trap. I got you thinking about the relationship between mountains and humans. My plan worked. You're fun. Alright. This has been a wonderful live stream. I'm always grateful that I get a chance to share this space with you. Drainador, Sarah. Now you want to know more. Did you know? Did you know that before I would ask people, did you know? And follow it up with meaningless answers, that I was a much less funny person? Now you're gonna think about that too. So I think this is a good time to end today's live stream, but not before we do a little bit of a meditation practice together, if you're interested. Today we're going to do the meditation chanting mantra that we had planned for the previous live stream, but ultimately didn't get around to it because the live stream went on forever and I needed to eat something and go to bed. What is that mantra? Well, I'll tell you. The mantra is Om Tang Vastu Devataya Namah. It's one of the mantras that comes out of the Kamika Agama, this ancient Druidian scripture that tells us about the meanings of each Sanskrit sound. The Sanskrit sound that this mantra is formed from is ta, the letter T in English. Sanskrit sounds, when their consonants, are assumed to have the vowel a following them. So that letter makes ta. And when you have a dot over top of it, a bindu, known as an anuswara, a nasalization, symbolized here in the International Alphabet of Sanskrit transliteration by an M with a dot under it. It creates this wonderful, ringing, resonating sound. Dong. You make this sound by bringing the space of resonance to be dominant in the nasal cavity. We normally don't associate nasal sounds with any sort of spiritual aspect in English. In general, it just sounds like you got a stuffy nose if someone's speaking nasally. But the yogis didn't. They saw the nasal cavity as the highest space in which you could create a resonance of sound. And when you bring the resonance higher and higher and higher in your body, it naturally finds rest in the nasal cavity. Many Indian instruments mirror this sound too. You'll find it notably in the bija that so many mantras have, and that can exist as a standalone mantra, the pranava. Anyways, it's said that this sound, ta, is associated with Vasudevata. This means literally household deities. And the purpose of chanting this is to connect you with your ancestral divinities, the spiritual connections that are already immediately or almost immediately accessible by your very own bloodline. So it can be a way of connecting with your ancestors, with your family, or the forms of the divine that your family is connected to. And it might not even be preserved by your immediate family. If you don't like them, no problem, you can still chant this mantra, because some of your more ancient ancestors might be more in tune with what you actually prefer when it comes to spiritual forms. So we create the dative ending of devata, devataya, and finish it off with the word namaha, meaning salutations. We get Aum Tang Vastudevataya Namah. And if you want some pronunciation pointers, just remember that the O, A, E, these are all long vowels, literally, in terms of duration. And at the end of Namah, there's an H with a dot under it, or the two dots at the end of the Devanagari. That's like a mini exhale called a Visarga. So like you're offering your breath to your ancestral divinities. We'll chant it 108 times together. You're free to listen or follow along, and we'll keep count on this mala. Aum Tang Vastudevataya Namah. 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 Aum Tang Vasudevaya 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 Namah. Aum Tang Vastudevataya 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 Namah. Salutations to ancestral divinities, household deities. May all who hear this chant be connected with their familial traditions, if they choose to be open to it. It is said the sound ta grants success in everything you do. So let us bask in a few moments of its reverberations in silence together. Feeling all the beliefs in your ancestral lines. They all connect back together at source, but branch out and converge in many ways between you and it. Feel all that unified diversity. Feel all the living traditions flow through you now. With that power, may you be able to do anything for the good of this world. Thank you for chanting or meditating with us. That concludes the meditation, and it concludes the live stream. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you to my lovely moderators for helping keep the peace. If there's anything I can do to make this space more inclusive to you or anyone, let me know. May I be a more humble host for you next time. Have to solve a one-piece puzzle. There we go. May this live stream be an offering to the divinity within you. Sato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityor ma mritangamaya. Aum Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to the light, from death to deathlessness. Om. May there be peace in us, may there be peace in our environment, and may there be peace in the forces that act on us. Much love to everyone here. Remember that it's not the things we have or don't have in this life that counts. What matters is how we use the things we have and how we are open to the things we don't. May you all have a wonderful rest of your present moment. Namo